library.
Yeah.
Tom's still rocking the
Save
full
money,
suit.
you know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Chilly.
Because, you go into the LMS office, man, it's sub-zero over
Taking
there.
the coat off.
This is
Forget
so
that.
cute. That's the coolest
I noticed
room I've
that.
been in all
Your shirt's
day.
You know what?
Scott, that's a little.
I'm loosening up
Get
because
that.
it's
Don?
really hot.
I know, Nick.
We're all set.
Scott's got the right idea.
Well, it's 90
86
degrees,
in my classroom
and, you know,
today.
I do a little bit of.
Oh, my goodness.
How hot?
86.
Yep. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, residents of Litchfield, and welcome to the May 27th school board meeting. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
revisions.
We'd like to move G, reports, business administrators up in front of the handbooks. Just because, we'll
Because I complained, you can tell them the truth. Mr. Superintendent, I
Because we're
complained.
trying to be kind to our business administrator tonight, and there's a chance that one of those agenda items may be much shorter than the other.
Any others?
Nope, I think we're all set.
Very good. All right, summary of non-public actions from May 13th, 2015. Mr. Burke made a motion to approve the non-public minutes from April 22nd, 2015 as written. Mrs. Quintana, second. Motion carried 3-0-0. Mr. Barker made a motion to accept the nomination of Jason Pelletier as Director of Technology for the District 2015-16 year. Mrs. Quintana, second. Motion carried 3-0-0. Mr. Barker made a motion to accept the resignation of Elizabeth Dodd. Mrs. Quintana, second. Motion carried 3-0-0. Mr. Barker made a motion to accept the resignation of Laura Moody. Mrs. Quintana, second. Motion carried 3-0-0. Any presentations, recognitions?
No formal ones tonight. We may want to do an informal one if Mr. Leckliter wants to inform folks of the recent award for
Yes.
Carolyn Lake.
Now, good time? Yeah, so last week on Friday, I got some good news. We had nominated Carolyn back a couple of months ago for Band Director of the Year, and we got word that she is receiving that award in about a month. New Hampshire Band Director of the Year. So congratulations to Carolyn. If you've been to, any of our concerts at the middle school, the program speaks for itself, and Carolyn is just an amazing, talented. Middle school music programs are a challenge to motivate kids and keep them sustain that through 4 years at our school. And our numbers have been fantastic. The interest is always high, and the talent level for a town our size, a district our size, is phenomenal. So congratulations to Carolyn, well deserved.
In fact, her end of the year concert is next Wednesday.
Coming up next Wednesday night, yeah.
Here at
Yeah, 6:30 here in the auditorium, so. And Lisa Lasaki, actually, while I'm on awards, Lisa Lasaki, our fax teacher, was awarded the Loyalty Award this year. Some of you have been to the VFW, Hudson VFW Loyalty Awards. They give annual awards, and this year she was recognized for her community service for the school community and all that she does. She's very involved in health and wellness and contributes a lot to the entire district. So congratulations to Lisa as well. So,
Congratulations. Excellent, thank you.
thanks.
Brings us on to correspondence. If I'm not mistaken, there may have been two. Was there one from Jason's over the last 2 weeks?
There was one from Jason concerning Common Core.
Yeah.
And there was a second one today from parent Kristen
Right.
Baker commenting on her disapproval of the dress code.
Yeah.
I would read it, but it's a very lengthy
It'll be part of the
email.
minutes, but I mean, Ms. Baker had several concerns as far as, well, she mentioned discrimination, but as far as it being equal across the board, as far as dress codes, and she feels that it's not quite fair across the board. But again, the letter is quite lengthy and it will be part of the minutes, so. And I'm sure it'll be addressed when we talk about the student handbooks anyway, or it'll be in there as far as the dress code. Is the approval of draft minutes from 5/13/15.
Line 114. Mrs. Van Der He indicated most of the students are now on track and only require monitoring. However, the few that may need contracted services, and that was identified as for the development of the plans. So I think she specifically stated that the contracted services would be for new students who needed behavioral plans created for them.
Make a motion to accept the minutes with the change.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained?
Abstain.
302. Bring us community forum. That's it. Superintendent comments.
The Senate voted on what came through the legislature as House Bill 323 last week, and it was passed as revised. We're still waiting for some legal opinion from the state, but it looks as though the final version will allow the use of SAT at grade 11 instead of Smarter Balance, conceivably as early as next year. And that it will be true only if it's part of the waiver that the state is working on right now. And that the understanding that we have as superintendents is that it'll be an all or none. Every school must test with the SAT. And I believe there's unanimous support of superintendents on that. So with some luck, that will be allowed. The language used to specifically talk about the PACE model of competency-based assessment. That model allowed districts to join a consortium working on 2 or 3 competency-based assessments a year, using the model that all 3 schools have experience with. Currently, there is a group of 4 schools that are involved. Starting in 15-16, 4 more have applied for the pilot and to be added. If we decide that we would like to pursue that option as well, the earliest that would be available to us would be the 2017-18 year, and we'd have to start working on that next year. Part of the waiver application would indicate that schools involved in the local competency-based assessments, those would be locally developed or regionally developed among districts, administered as part of the grading system and also part of the state accountability system. That would reduce the Smarter Balance testing to grade 3 reading, grade 4 math, grade 8 reading and math, and then the SAT at grade 11. So basically grade spans, reading would be in 3 and 8, math would be 4 and 8, would give you some, and then in between competency assessments. But across, I believe the expectation will be all the core subject areas, probably 2 or 3 competency-based assessments per year.
So does this affect Common Core assessments, or is that going to be different?
The Smarter Balance would be the Common Core assessments, and I think the expectation is that the performance assessments would be measuring student progress towards Common Core, but in relatively high order thinking, complex tasks. I think I mentioned before, one of the examples that has been used and distributed is called, creating a dog park, which seems to have come very similar to one that Griffin Memorial School shared with the QPA network 2 years ago and put up as their exemplar. So the title and much of the task resembles that work, but it was part of a consortium that things were put up to be shared, so that was the reason. It's it's likely that a good chunk of the original work on that came actually from our elementary teachers and administrators, so nice to know we're have folks working at that level.
If the switch is made for the 11th graders, is the so now all juniors would have to take the SAT exam. Is the amount of money that's been set aside for the Smarter Balance assessment enough to cover what needs to be to pay for the SAT prep and the SAT exams?
The SAT exam, yes. So there's no cost to any of the students. It would be required as part of the state assessment, but the big advantage is that for students, the SAT has meaning for most, because most either aspire to or will at some point in time aspire to, we hope, attend some sort of post-secondary education. And So we'll have students that we believe are vested, and therefore we'll have more accuracy in terms of the results. But that's available, whether or not we do PACE, that should be available if the waiver is approved for next year.
But will they, I know we have classes or whatever to help students with their PSAT or SAT. Are we gonna be running those, and will those now then become programs that are sponsored by the school, so paid for by the school?
I wouldn't expect so. I mean, it might be a conversation that we have, but quite honestly, the SAT is moving to be more a measure of typical high school curriculum than it is of the more esoteric scholastic aptitude. So there's an alignment there, and what we do in class on a day-to-day basis should prepare them for it. If students want to go above and beyond that, they can still take the course. But I mean, quite honestly, good quality teaching in the classroom every day should help prepare them for the SAT.
Okay.
You have anything else, Dr. Cochran?
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Bring us on school board comments.
Yeah, I have just one comment. I tried to get the minutes from the meeting that I missed on the 13th. Was not able to get those said meetings before Friday. So I'd like the school board to adopt a policy that says, since our meetings need to be in draft form within 2 or 3 days after our meeting, that they be sent out to any school board member that misses a meeting within that time frame, so that we have more than the Friday before Memorial Day weekend to review said minutes.
Makes sense. 'Cause they are ready, so there's no reason why we can't send them out. Any other comments?
Excuse me.
We got our student reps are not here. Then bring us to the technology report.
First, I'd like to introduce our new IT director, Jason J. Pelletier, who comes to us most recently from Greater Lowell
Vocational Technical High School.
High School, and before that, network administrator at Wyndham School District. Jay has started already. He was on location one day last week. We'll be here 2 days a week this week and next, and then we'll phase into 3-4 days a week the last week of June, and then full-time on July 1st. So I want to welcome Jay and to your first board meeting and to the district. In terms of the update, I'd like to go first and distribute to the board a little memo on where we are with the SIS. We have been able to have involve Jay in some of the conversations. The person that's been doing a lot of the heavy lifting in this has been Barbara Bielowski, who was actually off this week. But we really took a look at the viability of moving to Infinite Campus. We did lose some time with the transition, 2 transitions this year with our technology directors, and it has put us behind our timelines. But we've had some very frank conversations with Infinite Campus about the process and where the time will come from at the various steps along the way. And I especially want to thank the administrative assistants, Barbara and Mr. Thompson, for sitting in on a long and somewhat tedious phone call that really helped lay out the work that needed to be done, and had some really good conversations about whether we think this is viable. A little bit of background information. Our current system is Rediger. It is doing a significant upgrade for next year. Edline is going away, and they have a web-based gradebook. It's still not a relational database. It doesn't have the learning management functionality or some of the other ancillary functionality that we have. And the group is still recommending that we move to Infinite Campus. So the question becomes, what would we have to do to try and make this work for September? So this basically outlines what would have to happen. We believe that, barring bad fortune, we have a good shot at being up and running with the database, the ability of teachers to take attendance, for the offices to go in and make errors and changes, so a teacher first period marks a student absent. In fact, they come in partway through the day, they can go in and override that and turn it into a tardy, basic stuff. Student discipline records, so if a student is disciplined, it gets registered electronically. And the web-based real-time teacher gradebook. In order to do that, there's a lot of things that has to happen. And the bulk of the first part really involves the key admin assistants who do the database work in Rediger, some of the administrators, and people who know how we do things. We have to take a look at our data and see how it aligns with the fields in Infinite Campus. So, for example, if we have, Mr. Barker, do you mind if I use you as an example?
Sure.
If we looked up one of the registered students from the Barker household, we would see parents, Derek and Becky Barker, with an address that says 123, right? In Infinite Campus, because you need to affiliate students with each other and students with parents, that needs to be broken into multiple fields. So one Highlander Drive, we would have as one Highlander Drive, one field. In Infinite Campus, that's street number, or house name, one. Another field is the street name, and then whether it's street, drive, circle, or whatever becomes the third. And it will basically double the parent increase. So we need one for each parent as well. Because if we're talking about parent portal accessibility, we do have cases where one parent has access to student records, but the other parent does not. And we need to be able to honor those things legally. Jay has indicated there's some ways to have some shortcuts that would basically not have to have us retype. But Barbara has completed the first of those and done a current year extract. One of the issues that we have is we want to pull at least 4 years, more likely all the data that we have in Rediger of student records, grades, those sorts of things. So if you look at what we would need to get done in order just to be up and running in Infinite Campus, that's the first list. Then we would start working on the second list of things. We would, in order to get the assistants time, we need to be paying them some overtime. We need to be allowing them to take vacation after the school year has started, just because they're key. The goal would be to know by August 1st whether or not we're going to continue with the existing system for a period of time or for a year, or whether we're making the cutoff. We're going to have to
Can I
do
ask
this.
just a question? I guess I'm just a little confused. So, the administrative assistants, we're talking administrative assistants in the schools,
One in each building.
in all of the offices.
Yep.
And they normally work on a school year calendar, meaning
Yep.
when the September and the end of June. So would they be working in July?
Yes, they do work in July.
Okay.
They
Are
work a full
they,
year.
are they full year, their
Yes.
calendar years?
No, full year,
That's what I mean, they're,
Full year. Yep.
so they're 12-month employees, not,
with the exception, I
Yes.
believe, of one at the high school here.
Now, the other thing is, that's also during the part of the time that those people are crucial in building the budget. So, we've already spoken to the key folks in each building. We know there's nobody that is gonna have tremendous impact with vacation, so they know the kind of schedule that they would be committing to, and they seem, very supportive and interested in moving forward.
so is there a way to get temporary summer help? I mean,
Yes, that would be the other thing.
that would be,
It's just data entry, right?
this is just really that,
And the other
the
piece
stuff that
is-
they're looking at is not personal information other than street, address, and name, correct?
Yeah, no, it's just the work that they normally do every week.
No, I'm just saying, if you brought in outside people
Oh, yeah.
to scrub
No,
the
it's-
data,
it's-
you're not
it's
giving
not
them
personal.
disciplinary or any other personal
Nope.
type information other than addresses, emails, and stuff like that they're putting into
Yep.
correct fields.
And using the database export tool, Barbara was able to go in and withdraw the information into a spreadsheet, in pretty crisp order. And
So how far are we going back? I mean, we got 15 years here, but
Well, here's the other thing.
two schools go
We
back
don't
much
need-
longer than that.
You need to have both systems contracted for a period of time. Our contract, our annual contract with Rediger is about $12,000. The total cost that takes it over $20,000 in a normal year is for the stipends for people who support Edline and roll the grades over, and also the 3 individual contracts for Edline. So for about $12,000, we could maintain the other system for an entire year and then do the extract during that year. Now, what we'd probably do is contact them and see if we could get a 6-month contract at half that. But if they know why we're asking, they'll probably say no. But it's pretty cheap
I don't think we
insurance.
should be, you know,
No.
any foolish here. I mean, but the
Yep.
goal would be to have all the information that we need to have by whatever state laws or federal laws ask that we have that's in, we're going to have that
Yep.
available into the new system. You know, even if a student, you know, is graduated and we have to keep track of whatever their records were for however long.
So
Have all that.
if we hit these, and I think we have a good shot at it, then once we're up and running in the fall, we're looking at extracting the historical data. That can be done at any point in time, because all we're doing right now is rolling up this year's students in the next year. You actually have to create the report card structures, the reporting, all that stuff. Most of that is custom reports, and it's done by Infinite Campus. We just give them here's what we want the report card to look like, make it happen. So we may have to contract more of that out if we want to play a little bit more on the safe side, but we have been very diligent about setting aside the E-rate monies, and so we could do more of that if we need to. And then implementation of the parent and student portal, because once everything's in there, then you have to go through the database creation piece, where you actually, for every student, you match the appropriate parents to the appropriate students, create the database, and then it becomes functional. It could be that might not be functional until, you know, well into the year.
Are these costs that can be encumbered from this year's underspend to be used to cover the costs through the summer for all of this?
Some could be. So the contract with Infinite Campus actually would start from the day that we sign it, which would be very shortly. And so there would be 2 portions. There would be the rest of 15-16, and then, and the consulting that do with us for the entire month of June. So we would be left with the 15-16 budget would have to carry the 15-16 contract piece, you know, the annual subscription fee. But other than that, whatever we can get done within this fiscal year could be charged this fiscal year. I'm assuming that the board would like us to move forward with
As fast as possible.
trying to get this done and make it work and making it a priority. On the back of this is the information that talks a little bit more about the learning management system. It is integrated with Google Drive, which is really what we're looking for. That probably would not go into operation in its totality until year 2. But if we could get everything else up running, worst-case scenario would be that we would have to delay the parent portal. And then the question becomes, for how long? But all of this is also hinged on the assumption that you're good with us advertising and filling the database position effective immediately, which I just wanted to put this in front of you to let you know. There is still a chance that come August 1.
That's what I was gonna ask. What happens come August 1 with the work that's being done between now and August 1?
We do the rollover within Redeker. We open up the year, we're scheduling in Redeker anyway, and we open up using it, and then we have to make a decision about, do we wait a year and get everything done and just shut off the switch at the end of June next year? Do we try and transition halfway through at the mid-year? You can do it technically at any point in day, at any given day, because you can just shut off, you know, Mr. Cooper's access to one system and make sure you give him the PD and put him into the other. My concern is that we're taking people who know how, and especially in middle and high school, who have a grade book in Edline. We're now gonna have to give them PD and time and support to set it up in Redeker for the start of the school year. And we'll be able to give them that PD, and that is at probably 1 full day of our 3 days in August. then we would have to give them at least a full day of PD and have them switch over again in the middle of the year. So they'd be making two pretty significant transitions. And
Well,
so,
don't we have a professional development day in November?
well, we could have some flexibility with the calendar that would allow that.
There, well, I don't want us to be a bull in the china shop. We are teachers and educators at the highest levels. And we expect our students to be challenged every year with new things that we present to them. And I firmly believe that I would ask that the school board 100% support this. And when you come back to us on August 1st, tell us that you're ready to go and
That we've
you'll
got
have
the-
it up and running. I think we can sit here and procrastinate till it's totally perfect and there's no hiccups, and we're going to have hiccups. So I think we should just get it rolled out
Working infrastructure.
and deal with the issues as we need to, and trust that the students and the teachers will work through the process and be successful in that. And if we have scheduled at least 4 days where, for training purposes, and I would imagine that if we determined that we need to make a change on those and move them up into September, October, so that the teachers are getting some all-day training or half-day training that is necessary, then the school board could take a look at that and with a proper amount of notification. Well, I know it would create a ripple effect for parents and stuff like that, but with a proper amount of lead time, we could move stuff that's scheduled for 2016 forward, because I think this is important enough to have that time vested. And I think you guys will know fairly quickly, and
I believe so.
put the resources to it. I think that's probably your biggest question is, it's a resource issue. It's nothing more than enough people to do the work, and I think that, I think you have the resources, and I think you have plenty of people. If not, then get some in, and I think there's plenty of money to start the year that Frank will not let you have, but, pry it out of his fingers, he'll give it to you.
Well, I already know where it's coming from. I'm
Get
just
it-
not gonna say
just-
publicly right
just-
now.
Just, I think we should get it done. I think we've waited long enough. We've got a pilot program that we want to start, and everything is sort of relying on everything going boom, 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 and the dominoes are falling.
I'm assuming that's a good thing.
I think it's a good thing. I think that, I think we've worked very hard on the infrastructure, and it's now time to start seeing some of the fruits of all the money we spent for IT, for both the students and the teachers, the investment we've made in classrooms and stuff like that. And I would imagine that the teachers would probably like to see it go, to get it started, so.
Network and infrastructure, this will be the last time I'll have to speak about this. We did have a study done, which I was able to share with Mr. Barker and Mr. Burke at a meeting earlier. We do have some issues to address, and right now, Jay is working through his project management skills, which are substantial, to look at what we need to get done when, from a budget perspective. We're playing a little bit of catch-up in terms of the voice over IP.
Right.
He's having to wrap back and look at contracts that were developed a couple of months ago. But we expect to have something moving on that in the short period of time. We have some work to do with patches and getting our servers up to speed. And fortunately, we have Jason here, because our thinking was that, well, we could do that between now and the end of the school year before he came on, and he informed us very rapidly that that's all good until something goes wrong, in which case the server can be down for 3 days. So that's work that's best left to times when the schools are out for at least a week. So we're gonna postpone that work, thanks to his advice. And we have some consultants come in to take a look at issues that we're having with the VMware, and especially the library and the 2 labs in LMS. And other than that, we've got the voice over IP, the access, building access stuff, a wireless upgrade at the high school. So I think Mr. Pelletier is going to have enough to do in this first while. His portion for the SIS will be delayed somewhat, so there's a benefit to that. And I'm assuming that Board has given us approval before to move forward with the hire for the database administrator, so I'm assuming we're going to move forward in that ASAP. So, thank you on that.
Can you forward the rest of us the report
Sure.
on the school board?
It was just, we happened to be in a meeting, and
That's fine. Just, I think the rest of us
actually, I
like
can
to
do
see
that
it.
right now. Mr. Perez?
Yep, I have a one-to-one technology pilot committee update for you, so I'm gonna just hand around a little handout that I created. So basically, due to some, Smarter Balance kind of consumed my life the first 2 weeks before vacation. And then when we got back from vacation, I was out for a week due to personal reasons. So we kind of got log jammed a little bit on upcoming meetings. So this Friday, actually, Julie, Heon, and I are meeting for our prep meeting to get ready for our next meeting, which is going to be Wednesday, June 3rd, 2015. During that meeting, you'll see that we're going to talk about the one-on-one device technology integration form that we created. We handed that out last time. I have copies. If you would like another copy, just let me know. We're also going to discuss and hopefully work on completion of the one-on-one pilot evaluation tool, what we're going to use to evaluate and collect data. And then we're going to also have the discussion about a device for the pilot, what device we're going to go to. And that brings me to the next bullet. Social studies teacher Justin Ballou and a few other teachers test drove a couple devices. They came up with 2 devices that they're going to bring up next week at our meeting. One of them was a Samsung, the other was a Toshiba. You can see the 13-inch screen, 4 GB RAM. He said that the 2 of them were pretty, out of the ones that Brian Anker got for test laptops, those were 2 of the better ones that they looked at. Off the top of my head, I do forget which one Tom recommended. Brian, do you remember that one?
I'm sorry?
Do you remember the one that Tom Dewar recommended?
Yoga?
Was it what was it, Julie?
Yoga?
Yeah.
The one that's not on the list.
Yeah, it's not, I don't have that one on here, so. Then the third bullet was just the Burlington High School, the attending members. Brian, you went, Julie went, Lori, and then some teachers from the high school. And basically, teachers came back pretty enthusiastic and empowered, but realized that this was going to be a pretty large cultural shift, technology-wise, and I think they came back with a better understanding that it's just not going to be word processing. It's not just going to be Microsoft Office use. It's going to be a lot more. It's going to be a lot of using apps, learning, critical thinking, kind of just going out there and finding things to better their education. So a lot of research and things like that. And then future visits, I do have an email out to Winnicott High School to see if some members of the staff here can go and talk to either through conference call, if they can come here, we go there, just to kind of see. They just finished out their first year of one-to-one technology. I believe it was just the freshman class, the whole freshman class that Winnicott went through a one-on-one tech. So I'd like to kind of hear what some of the bumps in the road that they took this year, because this will be their first year completing that going forward. So that's my update.
Is there a meeting scheduled with the parents for the pilot program? I remember reading something like that.
We met with the incoming freshmen, and Dr. Cochran spoke to those parents that night as a sign-up.
And that'll be another discussion point too, John.
How did that go over with those parents? or not
Good.
go over? Did
I think it went,
anybody of them say not gonna do it now, or were they enthused about?
no, they were pretty enthused. A lot of the questions were directed towards the pilot, the ones that were interested in doing the pilot. And they were all really good questions. Just, technical questions, but they were good. They were good questions.
I mean, Mr. Perez and I have talked about putting an information package out and trying to find a night that we can have Mr. Pelletier there, hopefully a couple of the staff members, Justin Blue, who's actually, very strong in this area, hopefully a couple of the teachers who would be involved in the pilot, and as I'm looking at Mr. Cooper, and have them look at the machines, look at the functionality, and the other thing they have to put in place is the purchase system, and be able to explain to them the administrative controls. Did you want to spend 2 minutes just to talk about with the Chromebooks, the nature of administrative controls?
Sure. So with Google, you have the option, it's a good option to manage a device, meaning you can provision certain things. So if you want to provision certain apps, so every math class wants to use this certain app, instead of touching all of the Chromebooks that hands-on, you can just go into this management console, add that. If you change wireless, or if you need to put kids on a different wireless for testing, or get them into like a smarter balance mode where they could take that test, you can do all that stuff from the console. It's also a great way to asset tag things and keep a good inventory. And you can also push out other helpful things like Chrome extensions with this management piece, and it makes it a more seamless environment for your students and for your teachers, and it also helps on the IT end. We can make changes when need be to improve the learning experience of the students and also the functionality for the teachers.
So the software that goes on these devices for malware, malware viruses and stuff like that goes on those devices, basically that no matter where they're at, that's going to firewall them from being able to go wherever we don't want them to go on those specific devices, no matter where they are. Is that correct?
Right. So as far as like filtering goes, that's something that I can't speak to at this moment in time. If you're talking about like if they get filtered outside, but there are some things like ad blockers and any malware extensions that we can add onto those to help with that. Also, the other thing that you can do, another side to that management piece, is you can kind of put into this repository the only things that they can download. So if you're like, okay, there's all these nice things for math, there's all these nice things for science, whatever, they can pick and choose what they want to have access to if you choose to set it up that way, to kind of safeguard them from either getting what you call like drive-by downloads of malware or extensions into the browser that then they have pop-ups and all this other type of stuff. So so that management piece also helps with that, so you can make sure that things that don't belong on the device don't end up coming on there.
So
In Burlington, they did have it set up that way, John, because, talking to the students, there's many websites that they can't
even
go to.
go to.
And, there have been websites where they've gone to, and all of a sudden IT like realizes it, and they just shut that site down, so.
So you have, when they're in the building, I would imagine, if they are trying to go anywhere or do anything, first of all, I know they're not gonna get there because they're gonna get through our firewall and stuff. But if somebody's been outside the school system with their device, doing whatever, but they walk back in, will our system identify that they may have been somewhere that they shouldn't have been, and immediately notify IT about that because the system is communicating now with our system?
Sure. So with a lot of setups, unfortunately, I think you use CyberRoam here. That might have the functionality. A lot of filter systems have the functionality that even if you choose to set it up that way, that if you go somewhere, it automatically will communicate with the school, say, no, you can't access this, you can't access that. And you can also do your own web filtering within that management console. So if there's like the real big list of things that we don't want the students to get to, you can import that right in and go from there.
For the pilot, the district's not going to own the devices, though, aren't the students going to have to buy them themselves?
How we structure that is one of the other things that we have to look at. There are different ways that you can do it. You can have them pay the money to lease it from us. There are also ways that you can have them purchase it, and then they purchase it and sign an agreement that says we have the ability to
control it, basically. I don't know. Some parents, I can see them saying, if they own the device and they paid for it, I'm going to go to whatever websites I want to go to, and you're not telling me what I can download.
And so our authorized use policy and the agreement that we sign, that they sign, would have to indicate what the
agreeing
parameters are.
to.
And that's why that parental night is a key piece.
Makes sense.
We do also have the flexibility, as Mr. Pelletier indicated in a conversation earlier today with Mr. Cooper and I, that if students wanted to download apps, that they could submit and say, could we have this, these apps added to that list? And so there would be an approval process, and then they would be able to go. So we have the ability to sort of cordon off and identify those new apps that students might want for their own use and verify them.
Yeah, it's pretty seamless. Most of the changes take place immediately, so the teacher could say, hey, really would like this app for tomorrow's class, and with ample time, you can make that happen pretty easily with that management piece too.
I actually had a question for Mike.
Sure.
Because it came up during Burlington and talking to the assistant superintendent, that, have you as a committee sat down and discussed goals or measurable goals, what you're going to be looking for at the end of the pilot year?
Yeah, that was, that one-on-one technology integration, that's what we've been talking about. I mean, I have other copies if you want another one.
The reason I ask is because they didn't seem to they didn't have measurable goals.
Yeah,
And all the questions I asked them, it's like they weren't interested in that.
right. No, the way that, it was nice, the way that Julie made up the template was what we were gonna look for in English and social studies and science. What are the basic things that first year we wanna really look for? And as a committee, that's what we were kind of bulleting out those things. And each subject only has one or two right now, just because we wanna make sure that we can evaluate it and we can collect the data off of it, so.
If I may,
Oh, yeah,
we
please,
put-
Julie.
We put what sort of the minimal expectation is for this year, so we weren't overreaching. But then we have if you have seen the draft report in the past, there's a section that says future considerations or whatever. So the brainstorming was very vigorous, as you can imagine. People were saying, well, I use this and this and this, and we really felt like we had to narrow the commitments, because those are the things that we'll measure in the evaluation, but we didn't want to lose a lot of those good ideas, so we have them stored in this section of the plan of what we hope to accomplish. I think as Mike indicated, I think that our final evaluation at the end of the year, I think our plan is to do one mid-year and one at the end of the year in the spring, and I think that given the enthusiasm of those who are willing to participate, the teachers, that we'll see that they actually went far beyond what our initial goals were, if you will, which is very nice.
Yeah.
I'd like to see, as a school board, actually see the final product of what you're going to measure and how you're going to measure it.
Yep.
Just to see.
That's the plan, we'll bring it to you, but it's not finished yet.
Yeah, no, I understand. I just
Yeah.
I think I'd like to see it so that we have a way of asking questions
Yep.
when administrators are here.
Right.
And we're reviewing it through the coming school year. These were the things that we were talked about, and how are we progressing, and how are we seeing results, and is it going faster than we thought, is it taking longer than we thought? And just to make sure that it is progressing. I mean,
I think you have to
I know we only have half the freshmen, but I mean, next year you could have, 80% of the freshmen coming in and wanting to do it, and with the idea that by the time the students moving into sixth grade this coming year, that as they move into high school, that we're at 100% participation in this in the program, and at the same time you're adding 10th, 11th, and 12th grade teachers into the program as the other students are moving up. So.
Thank you. That'll bring us to curriculum.
Ah, is that me? I think I'm seeing curriculum in my sleep, as you can see from this list. Very, very active. So, the beginning of this report is all of the recommendations from various committees and departments. Because this is a consent agenda, I'll entertain questions, I guess.
Well, my only question is, there's a lot there, and I didn't get to any of it till this afternoon. So I would ask that we, do you need a vote on these things today?
I do, because I need commitments and the ability to negotiate for better prices. I have estimates. We're also using some current dollars. So I do, if it would be helpful, I'm more than glad to summarize each one.
Well, Mr. Derrick, you're in the hot seat.
I actually missed the last meeting. I think you missed the last meeting too, didn't you? It was, yeah, I had meetings and
I can tell you that I've worked vigorously, you saw my mileage report, with all of these committees, and have unanimous decisions from teams and departments about these resources. Vetted, what you will see in your reports is that they're vetted against at least one or two other top contenders in each of the areas. Some of these, as I said, are immediate dollars, others are in the FY16 budget, but I need to negotiate, and then I need to juggle things so I can figure out when we could possibly do these things. It's taken time that I think is well worth it. Principals can probably speak to the fact that, you know, we've had lots of people involved, checking with their teams and departments, building consensus. Next time, there's actually a request to pilot, which are no dollars for ELA in the fall, and we've done visitations and phone calls. I can, in particular, want to speak to the last item, Project Lead the Way. Some of you may be familiar with this. What I can tell you is that what we're getting is access for a yearly subscription, is access to all the resources that this nonprofit organization puts out. We've been doing high school, primarily in career and technical schools, some high schools in engineering. We want to expand our engineering program, which we've discussed here before, and this will help us. The launch is their relatively new elementary portion, and as we're almost done the draft of the new science curriculum framework, which is based on the next generation science standards, and Project Lead the Way began with 2 modules for physical science in every grade, K through 6, and now they have a life science module and an earth science module, so now they've covered all 3 sciences that we're having in every grade.
Do we envision this replacing all of our current sciences? Or
At the elementary, it has the potential to do that, whereas we're using some really old kit models.
Mhm.
These modules would replace that. I have grant money to send 2 lead teachers, a teacher who will focus on first, second, and another one is focus on third, fourth. We're willing to spend 3 days in August at the training to be lead teachers and come back and do training. But the goal for next year, because we have some other initiatives, is simply that those 2 will pilot in their rooms unless their teammates say, no, I want in, but that would be totally voluntary. But the key is, for very small money, we can have access to their enormous resources that are regularly updated. They're all web-based, but if the teacher didn't involve the student on the digital aspect, they can download materials and go from there. We're only committed for a year, and we'd be the second school in New Hampshire to use the launch. It's so new, but many, many schools and CTEs are doing the engineering. And I would also like to expand that into our computer science. They have a computer science module. We really need to offer intermediate programming and advanced placement programming. We've talked about that at PERC, as well as some other computer science offerings. We have 2 of our top 10 kids at the honors banquet the other night who are going on to computer science at UNH, but they really have only had a half a year of intro to science. They haven't even had what is normally a full-year intro class, and they've had other things, web design, all that, but none of those are related to computer science. So I really feel that this is a weakness we have that we need to develop.
I did actually I looked at it pretty extensively since I couldn't make the meeting. And I guess that was one of my questions too, is this going to complement our computer programming at the high school, or is it going to replace it? Because this programming does all of that. We obviously have intro programming, intro web programming, advanced programming.
My
Would this
personal
replace it?
feeling
Yeah.
is that a half year of intro to programming is not what we should do.
No, this is
We
much
need-
more advanced
we
and
need
much
to
more current
do
compared
it-
to what we do today.
Correct.
Yeah.
It needs to be the full year, and then we would add on the intermediate and then the advanced placement from there. So in that case, it would be both a replacement and an addition.
Okay. When do you envision it? Would we be offering these classes next year, or would it be training throughout this year and then?
For the high school?
Yeah.
I would like to be able to replace the intro to computers. I'm not sure that we're going to be able to have the person trained.
Over the summer?
Yeah. So, but that's a desire that
Okay.
we have. But we have a commitment from the physics teacher, or the teacher who teaches engineering, who's a professional engineer before he came to us, to do the principles of engineering from the pedagogy point of view. In other words, he certainly is an expert with a doctorate in physics. Here we have, how do you teach high school kids, and they could be as young as freshmen conceivably, but probably sophomores to seniors, the principles of science using the methods and the resources that they recommend. And then there are other options to later on offer digital electronics and a whole series of things. And furthermore, our life science teachers would like us to offer the biomedical pathway that's in the future, because that would require a little more teaching capacity or some creativity in moving some things around. But we could do it. She did that in California before she came here.
Now, if for some reason we can't get someone trained over the summer, could the students still take the curriculum and do it as kind of like a self-study, like, or a guided study or anything like that? No, it needs to be taught by a teacher.
Yeah. This is not like VLAX or like that. This is very hands-on and requires the commitment. We would have to sign an agreement with Project Lead the Way that says things like we won't share it with anybody else, because even for a small fee, they use that money to enhance the resources, do the research, and it's not fair if, you kind of share your subscription all over the place. And what was your question?
I guess it was if we can't get someone trained, I guess how soon will we know if we have a teacher trained to do the computer science portion of it?
I'm not sure. It's kind of in negotiation. But even if we don't have that for computer science, we have
Still
the
have the
person who's
computer
going to do engineering. We have
But
to
we're not
have,
going to start off on the first page here, we're not going to start all 6 of those, that line of education this year.
you're talking about Project Lead the Way, just Project Lead the Way?
Well, I'm looking at the first page, it says potential STEM pathways.
Right. No,
Okay.
absolutely not. No. We would, and are you in the high school one?
Yes, it says 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade on the
Right.
top.
So principles of engineering, we offer that in some form now. So we would
Okay.
enhance that one for sure. We have a commitment from the teacher to do that.
It says introduction to engineering design, that's basically the same thing.
No, the next one down, principles of engineering.
So it says principles of biomedical science,
No,
introduction to
you're on
computer
the
science.
Wrong page.
Then it says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them are introduction to engineering design.
Yeah,
So it looks like there's different pathways.
right.
depending on
But
what your
the core,
career
the one we're looking at is principles of, the second course,
So
which
there's
is
only one course then?
principles of engineering, to start with. we have to offer three, at least three, by the end of year 3. So we have time to, and computer science can actually be one,
Well,
even though it
my
also has.
question is,
Yes.
my question is, so a student who's in either elementary or middle school, moving towards the high school,
Yeah,
and we have basically an area of study for 9th, 10th, and 11th grade that talks about different career fields that they may or may not be interested in as they're coming through the process. Is our goal to make them have if somebody comes in and says, I want to be a laboratory technician, are we going to have those 4 classes available to them and for the 9th, 10th, and 11th, and 12th grade for each one of these career fields that are on this spreadsheet?
I would describe that as being overly ambitious unless we had many more instructors, because that would involve lots more classes. I mean, it would be wonderful if down the road we could do that. Career and technical centers, where our kids go to, Alvern and Nashua and Pinkerton, can do that because that's their sole purpose. What I'm envisioning now is for us to take some baby steps into the process, see how it works, begin by enhancing the piece we have already, which is the engineering and hopefully the computer science, and then see if we can add courses from there. I'll tell you, if the board is willing to keep the number of teachers we have, even as some enrollment decreases, then we could add more of those courses.
So I guess I guess what I would like to see, and without any names attached, is whether or not on this spreadsheet that we have, this one,
Yes.
for each one of those classes, whether there is presently on staff a teacher with the background, the experience, or whatever, to teach any or all of these courses. And if not, what would be our goal to one, fix that process? Because, I mean,
We can do
you're
that.
asking for a vote of saying, yay, let's start this, walk down this process. But if the only class we can teach is principles of engineering,
No, as I
and/or introduction to computer science,
Right.
and there's nothing to do with that if you go to year 2, or year 3, or year 4. I would imagine the engineering teacher is probably very easy to get into engineering design, principles of engineering,
All of those.
aerospace engineering, and engineering design. I mean, I would imagine that if you have an engineering design,
Yes.
all of these classes, my dad's an engineer, so yes,
But
they
you
could
have
probably do all
to,
those.
what I'm saying though is, and they require this is part of the contract, is that for us to offer these specific courses within Project Lead the Way, you have to be trained.
Oh, I understand that.
So the question is, do we have people that have the background? Yes. And we have the enthusiasm of at least a few of them already. The question, and I can provide the funding for the professional development either through district money or grants. The question is, when they teach the required courses, do we have enough room in the schedule to add how many courses on top of that?
And I think part of that comes from one of the things that we talked about, and that is creating a pathway or a pipeline for students. I think we've done a good job of that in terms of our math trajectory. If you look at what we've done with our math sequencing through middle school and through the high school, between guidance and program changes, we have really shifted registrations where, more students are registering for science than used to, less in other areas. But it's a longer-term plan. It's really a 3 to 5 year plan where you say, could we have, a course in 3 or 4 of these, right? But more likely, pick 2 of these as things that students come into high school looking forward to, based on all the work that's happened through upper middle school and upper elementary and middle school, where they've had opportunities to do these things. And the cost is actually relatively small. It's not a per course cost. It's, Dr. Hean, could you share with us the cost structure?
For Project Lead the Way?
Yes.
It's, like I said, really small money. It's $700 for K through 4, $700 for 5 through 8, and then $3,000 for the high school. So for $4,400, we have unlimited access to their training and all of the resources. Our only expense is to buy, we buy now, we would substitute the supplies we've been buying for the old science kits with the things they have. In many cases, it's less expensive.
And at the very minimum, year one, we'd be doing 1st through 4 science and.
No, 2 pilots.
And principles
only-
engineering,
Yeah,
okay.
right. And it's very possible that with a new hire of an 8th grade science teacher, if that person's on board, that person would go for, because 8th grade is primarily physical science, it fits beautifully. So hopefully that person would go to training for the middle school, which is called Gateway. Yep.
I did hear too, I was talking to Mr. McDonough at the Academic Awards banquet, and he said that enrollment in the computer classes was way up this year, so that's encouraging. So if we could also
that-
give them better
yeah.
curriculum, then it's win-win.
Right. Yeah, there are almost 35 students, and we really would like to offer them a complete
So,
experience.
a full year of computer science, so 2 classes. You have 37 students or 35, whatever, you need 2 classes.
We may have to make a choice to offer 1 class of 24, which is what lab capacity is. And not all 35 are probably going to get scheduled anyway, because once you run the schedule, things conflict. So they would really have a strong experience. Or we could offer 1 half-year course and then a full-year course. Maybe throw it out to students. Students who are really interested in that potential pathway should jump into the full-year course, especially if they thought the next year we were going to offer an intermediate. I mean, in my previous district, I actually had a few freshmen who started with programming their freshman year, and they did wonderfully in advanced placement and really had a huge head start on their college experience.
Like on steroids or something.
Which one are you trying to get trained on, the intro to computer science or the computer science and software engineering?
Intro.
Intro?
But
Yeah.
but if they took, let's say a student took that wasn't graduating, would the next year, would we be looking for them to take computer science and software engineering?
I would love that if we could train a staff member. And those are some internal things that we're working on. But we'll find somebody to do it. Derek's got people at his work that are gonna volunteer and come teach. We have this master plan we worked out in Perk where we're gonna have some
Staggered
experts in the
volunteers.
experts in the field come in 1 day a week and teach a block, like Wednesday, and the skinny, and the other day, the sort of teacher we have here will reinforce that and do lessons. That's our
Violate all the.
plan for perhaps a year from now,
Like the bar-
to do some
bar-
really unique classes. We made a whole list, right, Derek?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
Of the list, I guess we're done with that one, of the list, I did read all of them. The only one I think that maybe you would want to look at or talk about would be America's Constitution.
Yeah.
And maybe you can describe it better, it's a book about the Constitution, it's the professor's
Right.
interpretation of what the founders meant when they created it. It can probably, of anything on here, that's probably the only one that could be considered controversial, I guess. Because it's obviously a single person's interpretation of what the founders meant, and
That is
God
true.
forbid we're called liberal or something.
Yes.
Man,
I
you
wouldn't
were
call
running by the town crier, did you?
I think it's probably a little bit of an overstatement that this is controversial. I think that Mr. Perot, who is really our leading expert on both the Constitution era and, as you all know, Abraham Lincoln and the Civil War, because he goes to these institutes and so forth. He certainly will be using, you approved the course, and you saw in there things like the Federalist Papers, which are primary sources. Those were the documents that were created in discussions prior to the ratification of the Constitution. And this is, Dennis has studied this thoroughly. He feels that it's important for the students who are taking this course, and those who have signed up, registered because we approved it earlier on, are really many of our high-end students who, I mean, if you look at the print, it's nearly a college book. It would be used in some
Pictures in that book,
colleges,
is there, huh?
but it would be used for
Excel ratings out
similar
there.
to an advanced placement honors course. And so it's really an in-depth study of the Constitution. It's not just let's memorize, you know, what everything is, what the factual aspects of it are. And his intention is to bring in other articles, which I'm sure will have some
Yeah.
varying points of view.
It did seem very interesting and had lots and lots of good reviews online.
My goal is, there's a company called Permabound, and they will bind in hard copy any book. So my goal, because I'm sure you see that this is paper, and why spend $13.50 on this every year if students aren't going to buy it? We are. So for another usually $7 or $8, we can get Permabound. So we're talking a little under $500 for the books.
Julie, can I see that copy?
Yes.
Do you mind?
This, by the way, is one,
Thank you.
yeah, one grade level of the social studies, which is everything that you're going to hear from me is, try not to go on too long, it's a full agenda. It comes in bundles now, so that right now we're buying math workbooks and social, you know, other kinds of things every year, and it's hard to predict the prices that go up and so forth. You know that we've consolidated all major purchases, large group purchases, into the district budget. So rather than having it piecemeal and in school, it's all in the district budget. So what companies are doing is they're saying, write-in texts is what the research is showing that will help kids learn better. They don't have to copy, waste time copying. Kids, we have lots of students who have difficulty, what's called tracking, reading and writing the right thing. And in math, they write the wrong numbers, or they don't remember what the question is. So this is considered a write-in text. The actual text of the social studies is here, all of the words. So if a student were to bring it home, the parent can also have context of what the student is doing. Sometimes they will tear out, these are perforated, they will tear out the pages and bring the assignment home. The other thing is, with all of these, there's a strong digital component. So this is the K through 3. This is the new, you can't find material on New Hampshire, for New Hampshire history, culture and history we do in 4th grade. This is a book that a couple of other districts were using, and we discovered it. So wonderful buy for 4th grade. And I'll just show you quickly. This is the high school biology book. This is by the most regarded author in biology. And so when we were comparing sources, this has a strong digital component. Most kids would never bring the book home. They will be reading in class, reading digitally at home, and doing assignments. This is the psychology book. And
So they're gonna be reading it digitally.
Yeah,
Why can't they read it digitally here?
I'm sorry?
If they're gonna read it at home digitally,
Yes.
why can't they read it digitally here?
Well, we would have to have one-to-one devices for all of our kids. Or be signed into computer rooms every day, and we only have 4 of those. So my
It's a great
goal-
concept, though.
With that reality, and I know the point you're making, so with that reality, anything I propose to you will have a strong digital component. I can't predict, I don't have that information, when we might be 100% digital, so I'm not gonna come here and say, let's buy that. But by having a strong digital component, and we have a 6-year commitment, whether it's that social studies, this is the teacher edition, the kids for the 7th grade history book. So for 6 or 7 years, we don't have to pay anymore, and all the updates they do will be available through the digital system.
For the history book, it seems like the Lexile rating's a little low.
Which history?
But that's covering that, well, it's
Okay.
880 for seventh grade, is that low, or?
We'll go back, thank you. We'll go back to our, just as a reminder, our lesson about readability. 3 components. One is Lexile, one is qualitative, and the other is purpose for reading. And on this side, social studies and science is packed with technical vocabulary. Names of people, names of places, scientific things in science. And so that is not really accounted for in a Lexile level. They use number of syllables and sentences and 100-word passages, that kind of thing. So, you know, if you were to bring up the Lexile, you'd then be another probably 100 to 200 points if you take into account the technical vocabulary. So, and this is an excellent book. We have 3 samples, and this one is far and away the best for what we need for 7th grade. We've got books that have the geography wrong because they're so old, you know, Africa, the Middle East, and all of that changes. So, and the key features of some of these materials are the restructuring of the literacy, not just based on Common Core, which it does because we have literacy across the curriculum, but we're talking about things like how things are arranged, excuse me, how they're arranged on a page, the amount of white space, the labels, the graphics, the photos, all of those things that either engage or turn off kids and allow them to understand what they're reading. So if we're going to spend money on these resources, we want the kids to use them. And I don't know if you've ever polled any of your students or friends, but many of them have admitted for years, even in the honors classes, that they often don't read all, and sometimes any, of the reading assignments. And they just try to get through without that. And and I'm telling you the truth, it happens. Our high school people are shaking their head, we know that. So we have to do
What kind of speed read?
what we can to get the kids engaged with the materials that we have.
Make a motion to approve the PERC recommendations.
Second.
So my only comment is that on every one of these documents, it says that it was adopted on 5/14. In my calculations, it was, on every one of the documents on the bottom of each page, it says this was adopted on 5/14.
No, it was 520.
That's the
last week.
form. That's your
Oh, is that our
policy form.
form?
Yeah,
So these were, when were these, when did
2014.
PERC?
They went to PERC
What-
last week.
Yeah, it's
Last week.
Last
Yeah.
Wednesday.
No, that's just the
Okay,
the
again,
date of the
our
policy.
question and our direction on this has been to get these to the school board members as quickly as possible, so that we have time. I mean, we got this stuff on Friday, on a 3-day weekend. Now, I don't know about the other board members, but I lived on a soccer field for 3 days, and my laptop didn't work well in the sun. So, and Tuesday and Wednesday, I had to work. So, while I agree 100% with all of the reasons behind that and the textbooks over there, you know, the direction from the board was, we needed adequate time to review this and to approve it.
And I think it only ended up being, what, 1 day late? You approved them on Wednesday, so we got them Friday, so a day late.
I hear you.
And I only work 4 days a week, 30
No, I'm with you. But you control the schedule. So this did not appear on the horizon after our last school board
The
meeting.
teams that were reviewing these needed more time to put them together.
Then I understand that. Then the school board should have the process of reviewing this and making the vote, being able to review the books if they so desire, and approving it at our next meeting on the 10th of June. I mean, that's just, you know, that's one school board member, but that's what we have in place as a process for these things, so that school board members and/or, in this case, citizens have the opportunity to read the minutes, go on to the website after this meeting and be able to look at these, and then come, if they so desire, either through an email or to the next meeting, to express their opinion on any one of these books or not. I mean, basically, if we approve this today, we are basically, if anybody has any reason to object, they're going to come to a deaf room in which they can express their concern, but it's already a done deal. And 2 weeks of work has occurred towards moving the process forward. So,
Further discussion?
Yeah.
I guess, if we did approve it on the 10th, how far off would that throw us? I mean, obviously, we have to schedule the PD and stuff like that, right? Is that the main thing we're waiting on, is scheduling the PD? Reschedule it anyway? No, you have to have it for purchase beforehand.
Further discussion? That was the motion for all of them?
Yeah, it's consent.
No further discussion. All those in favor of approving all of the recommendations?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
aye.
Abstained. Motion carries 4-1-0.
May I address one other item?
Okay.
We've talked about the digital component, and we have 20 classrooms that do not have access to either a smart board or a permanent projector in order to use these resources with the students. And so I think that Frank is going to speak to trying to see what we could do in the budget to try to provide units for those rooms. Down the road, we'll want to replace the few at the middle school that have just a projector that doesn't allow any manipulation. With Jason's help last week, we were able to find a unit that is less expensive than a smart board, but has all the functionality except this smart board software, which is unique to the board, and many teachers don't necessarily need to use it. You can use PowerPoint and all that. And the way it works is you have the regular projector installed, and it has an infrared capability where you can do all the moving and all of that. So we're hoping that as many classrooms as possible could be fitted with that unit and speakers so that the teachers can make full use of the digital aspects of the resources they already have, plus the new ones.
What's the price difference, out of curiosity?
Almost $700.
Is it the board chair that you're looking at? Is the brand the board chair?
Yeah, it's the Epson interactive projectors. And, yeah, they just plug in, so you can mount them pretty much anywhere. They're short throw, so they can be close if you need them to be close or not. And there's a wand that you can go, and the projector plugs in USB, just like a smart board does, into the computer, and then you can just manipulate it, the screen. You can also has capabilities, like if we're going to talk to the one-to-one, there's also capabilities so that the teacher can share the screen on the projector as well.
I think conceptually it's a really good idea. I know from experience using one that the technology, depending on what teachers are using for computers, to hook a desktop up to that unit needs to be located really in almost the middle of your classroom so students can access it and interact with it. To hook it up to a desktop, there's a lot of wires and cords that would run through your classroom, which is a hazard for a lot of students.
We do the wiring through the ceiling and the walls.
So it would go from the ceiling to the desktop?
Yeah, these would be permanent. We're looking to permanently mount.
Mounts. Yeah. That's the problem. We have just a very few mobile mounts now that, units that people have to move around, sign out, that kind of thing.
Right.
No, the ones we have already the wires are totally embedded, or they're run in runway.
Yeah.
So there's no like loose wires
On
and
the floor,
things,
yeah.
And we do have some restrictions, especially at the elementary school, of where the desktop is and the wires are run, but then we'll provide the teachers with a portable unit, a handheld, like a keyboard that they can use to, project whatever they want.
And I haven't seen the classrooms yet in most of those areas, but really, like one of our limitations are it's 16 feet is how far you want to run USB before you can kind of start getting flaky on you and everything. So that's kind of one of the constraints on that. But I've had some pretty good experience with that in some other previous schools, especially when the smart board units, they're not economically feasible.
So the cost comparison is about $5,000 for an installed smart board, and these would be roughly
I think they're
We said
$12.55
$15.50,
after installation.
and the speakers would
Yeah.
be two, but that's without speakers also. So
And the
it's less than
function,
half the cost.
probably less than half the cost with more than 90% of the functionality?
Correct, right.
And you just point at an existing whiteboard or wall or?
Exactly, it just has to be a dull finish, but that's the major savings, is that you don't have to buy the board and all the electronics that are on the board. Instead, it's the projector and the pen that do
Right.
the work.
And at the same time, you lose whiteboard space because it's taken up with the permanent board.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a win-win. And save money.
Have we ever tried, I'm just curious, have we ever tried one before? Do they work as well?
Yeah, I've tried them before in previous schools, and yeah, they work really well. As far as the smart board, and the smart software, which is the piece that you don't get if you get a smart board, you can purchase that if you feel like you need to have it.
Mhm.
But for the most part, again, just knowing from my experience, I still haven't seen a classroom, seen the teachers actually teach in their style, but for the most part, they need to manipulate the pages. They want the kids to be able to write up on there. You can freeze it, and you can have the kids circle, or the teachers can. They could circle areas of the screen and freeze it, blank it out, things along those nature. So pretty much most of the stuff that they do on a smart board, you'd be able to do that, especially when you're looking at cost constraints too. It usually is a good fit.
That's all from me.
Thank you. Okay, Frank, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I provided the board with, in your packet, a cover memorandum, and I'd like to just kind of briefly go over that, the details of which, in that I discuss, are in the attachment reports. First of all, with the general fund, year-to-date, we are at, for revenue received for the district, approximately $18.6 million, which is $520,000 less than we projected for the year. However, we still have approximately 5 weeks to go in the fiscal year. We still have payments from the town on the local assessment. So the projection would be that we will exceed our budget projection for the fiscal year ending June 30th. Year-to-date expenditures for the general fund is $16.2 million, with an additional 3.1 currently encumbered. That leaves an unencumbered balance of $683,000, which represents 3.4% of the total general fund appropriation. This time of year, obviously, we have discussions about what the projected unassigned fund balance will be at the end of the year. As stated above, we have exactly $683,282 of unencumbered money in the general fund at present time. That's 4.4% of the total appropriation for the fiscal year. As you've heard discussed in the past, from this we subtract two areas: self-funded, which has a balance right now of $10,570 underspent, and also special services, which is kind of a self-contained subdivision, if you will, of the general fund that we do not make assignment out of those areas. So if you take those two figures from the unencumbered balance, that leaves you with $290,400, or 1.5% of the total appropriation for the fiscal year. Right now, we are projecting, these have not been encumbered yet, but we do project to expend this money for the remainder of the year. You've heard the IT consultant come in and make some fixes on the areas of priority that were included in the financial, report that was received by the district. Dr. Heon just discussed the LCD projectors and speakers. CHS had in their budget for next year, which we had removed, anticipating the potential ability to fund this year, $18,000 for speakers and technology. That would be your one-to-one Google Chrome.
Those are actual Chromebooks?
Well, I think that's what was in the budget, whether or not that's gonna be the recommendation.
Okay. Those for teachers or those the students?
Those would be for teachers.
Two things, teachers, and at the same time, if we have 40-some students at any given time, you may have 3 or 4 Chromebooks down. So with the imaging process and the district control, basically, if a student has an issue, they could literally hand it in, go down to IT, and instantly have their profile imaged to another device and have it taken back. So we anticipate having, a handful of those. We also need charging stations in all of the rooms that are going to be associated, and spare batteries. So if somebody came in and they hadn't charged their battery at night, they can't not have their Chromebook for a day. So what they have to do is come in, put their battery in the charger, take the battery out, click it in, they're good to go. The battery life for the devices that we're looking at is actually very good, but human error sometimes happens.
Okay. But that 18,000 isn't for purchasing student technology.
And are we gonna look at that purchase? Are we gonna look at purchasing the pilot Chromebooks through the district?
At this point in time, in terms of the student ones,
Mm-hmm.
I had a discussion with Mr. Pelletier about that today. We're going to look at what Bedford is doing and make a recommendation, probably within the next week, about how to move forward.
Moving on down that list, LMS had in their budget for next year, the replacement, I believe, 29 desktop computers. That was removed from the budget as well. We're projecting to be able to spend down and buy those computers this year. LMS oil tank remediation was an issue that just came to us last week. The New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, I believe is the correct agency, passed a new regulation which required all underground storage tanks of number 2 fuel oil to be, basically the line coming from the tank to the school be double insulated, along with the electronics to measure oil leaks. That was passed, we were notified, my understanding is, quite a while back, and unfortunately nothing up to date has been done. So we are earmarking approximately $35,000 for that to be done immediately. It's a safety issue as well, but it's also something that if we have not completed the work by December 15th of 2015, we would be required to shut down the oil tank. So this is work that we need to have done immediately. So we have started the process with hiring American Tank Management, which is a company that will develop the specs, and they will go through the application process with the department and receive the permit for us to do the work, and we'll then have the specifications and the work requirement for that.
When were we originally notified? Do we know?
I don't have the exact, it was a while ago.
Like years or months or?
It may have been years. I don't
It was
have.
both schools, right? GMS and LMS.
Right, the facility managers at both schools would have been notified of this change. Because as you may know, the facility manager, when you have an underground storage tank for oil, they have to be certified by the state as well to do the readings and take certain things. So they would have been the facility manager of record for that particular school. Last but not least is our earmarking some dollars to remediate what we believe may be an issue with our tech shop here at Campbell High School. We had an incident last Tuesday, which brought attention to our exhaust system in our tech wood shop here at the high school. So we're waiting on some definition and some specifications as to the thought being that the current system is overutilized and not the correct size from when it was originally installed here at the high school. The thought is that it was installed to utilize and be able to handle a few machines, and credit to the program, it's grown to which we have now a lot of machines in there, so that the system may be being overutilized, which caused the problem last Tuesday.
Didn't have anything to do with any dirty ductwork, did it?
Nope. Now it's dirty.
Before or after the incident. So as you can see, by the anticipated, if we bring the anticipated expenditures to fruition at the end of the fiscal year, we're looking at excluding special ed and self-funded programs, a projected unencumbered balance of around $162,000, which will be less than 1% of the total appropriation for the general fund. So that brings you around that magical $200,000 that you manage the budget to. And I think, again, a couple of the expenditures you see on that list are really unanticipated. We do not anticipate having those expenditures, but we have the ability, however, to remediate those things and get them done this fiscal year.
So just a couple of suggestions. We're going to have a company out at GMS fixing our playground.
Yes. On the asphalt.
On the asphalt. I would recommend that we, or the board consider, we had received a quote for around $55,000 to $60,000 to complete the parking lot at GMS. And if they're going to be out for one, it may make sense to encumber the funds and go ahead and complete that.
Yep.
Complete that project.
Are you talking the loop, basically?
The loop and the
Section
back
near the
parking
fence.
lot, and then the,
Playground.
weren't they going to add spaces in front of the fence in 3A or something? I don't, or move that, or,
I recall
Whatever,
being the
it-
loop in the back most parking
I don't
near
think
the.
you know, if we're gonna be out there, we might as well fix the GMS asphalt issue and be done with it.
It would be, I would also suggest while they're there, look at the drainage issue there. We have a little bit of a collapse in the drain over the winter, so we can have to take a look at it.
Is that why we can't
But
play
that's-
soccer yet?
Yeah.
Is that why?
We're playing this-
Might be one of the reasons. So again, I think the board's mandate for us to look at spending down, encumbering funds this current fiscal year for those high priority appropriations that were cut out of next year's budget, we certainly had the ability to do that this year. So it's very helpful for us to have that opportunity.
By our next meeting, will you guys have evaluated any other maintenance issues or programs and stuff that may need to happen at any of the other schools, and determine whether or not you want to recommend any other encumbrances towards those things?
How many meetings do we have in June? Just the 10th and 14th?
10th and the 20th.
It's on 10th and 24th, yeah. So yeah, I would say just if we want anything to have by the 10th, so there's time for us to vote on the
Right.
24th.
And even then, you have to like get it scheduled.
No, you just
Yeah.
got to appropriate it.
Yeah,
That had to be scheduled.
We have to encumber it
No,
based on,
wasn't Frank.
based on a contract that you can sign by the 30th.
Right. If we have it signed, the rule of thumb typically is if you're expending it this current fiscal, you should have it delivered and the service is performed by. But the accountants, I won't say liberal, but they will work with us to appropriate the money to be spent over the summer and have it expensed back to the previous fiscal year.
So even the 10th is pushing it. I mean,
We don't
it's-
we don't promote that because it creates accounting issues for us.
Well, some of the work is you have to wait till the kids are out of school, like
Right.
tearing up
And that's how you
GMS
substantiate.
parking lot.
But I'm
you
just
know.
thinking, you go to
Just do that.
you go to the 24th, you may not even get a contract.
Last 2 weeks of school, we'll just destroy your parking lot, you know?
There's two other pieces that I'll point out to the board. Incorporating this is the report for budget transfers so that you can see where we've shifted some money around as well. And then the last 2 pages of this attachment, Mr. Frazier was kind enough to stand out front a couple of days in May, in the morning and also in the afternoon, to provide us with a bus count, because for some reason the bus company was having difficulty pulling this information together for us. But you'll see at the end of that report, I guess speaking in general terms, the morning, the buses are populated at a higher number than the afternoon return. However,
sense.
you'll notice a substantial number of students either are dropped off in the morning or they are walking to school. So Kelly was, again, kind enough to track that information because it's obviously helpful to us. But then you'll also see the afternoon pickup home. That's where we've reported out to you in the past, and you now see the data for that. We actually have some buses that have 0, 1, or 2
Bus 7.
students. Bus 7.
yeah. 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon.
There's a couple of,
On a good day.
the way that that I've interpreted the data, and we'll work with the bus company and need to work with Mrs. Rothaus and Mr. Perez, is for us to get information, data to the bus company sooner on who is purchasing bus passes for the next school year, because as soon as we can take that data and the demographics associated with what students are purchasing bus passes for the upcoming school year, get that information to the bus company, they can then take that and develop their bus routes accordingly. Because really what they're doing right now, the information, the data that we're giving them isn't coming into them until the start of the school year has already started. So those bus routes are already pretty much in place. So for us to make any major changes to them. So it'll be a process that we can work with school administration as well as the bus company and come up with a system that will allow us to get that data to the bus company sooner. And then what that'll allow, hopefully the outcome to that will be less number of buses needed at CHS both in the morning and in the afternoon, so that they can go directly and begin the runs for GMS and LMS, which will give us the ability to really not have much of an impact, or any impact, to those runs at the middle and the elementary school. So it's a bit of a process, but it's workable, and I think the data that Kelly was kind enough to compile for us shows what we all thought, was that we're underutilizing the bus services at CHS and can really sharpen it up a little bit, make it more efficient and effective at the other 2 schools.
Quick question on the CHS tech ventilation. I guess I had heard that the reason there was the issue wasn't that the exhaust wasn't good enough, but the exhaust just wasn't turned on. Is that accurate, or?
That's another piece of it.
Okay.
Yep.
So I mean, do we really need to fix the exhaust, or do we just need to turn it on?
Well, I can't answer that because I don't have the technical skills to analyze that, but we are based, we have had Mr. Lynch has pulled all the manuals. There's actually 3 that are each this thick on the specifications for the, I think what happened was it wasn't turned on.
Oh,
So consequently, what happened was the machine that was being utilized, the wood chip, began to heat up, which the smoke went somewhere, and then when you see smoke, you go into action to evacuate.
I guess I don't know how the ventilation works there, but is it one ventilation system for all the different machines? So I guess I understand we have more machines now, but if we're not using them all at once, do we still need a bigger one, or if you're only ever using 1 or 2 at a time?
I don't know when we're using them. That's
Okay,
why
that's the
I'm
problem.
saying
Okay.
that we need more information. We
Okay.
need to know if all those machines are being utilized, or half the machines being utilized, and what the capacity of the system is. If we only can utilize half the machines for the current capacity of the system, then that needs to be a protocol.
Okay.
So we're really looking at it, we just wanted to earmark some money if in fact
case
some
we had to
changes
do it.
need to be made.
Okay, so
Yep.
it's not,
It's not cast in stone at this point. We're still in discovery and doing some information gathering on that.
okay, cool, thanks.
As soon as Mr. Lynch, if he's watching, gets back to us with a recommendation, he picked up all the 3 binders yesterday. Just one more piece, update of information for the board. A while back, FEMA came out with a grant to the state of New Hampshire to recover costs associated with the storm in January. I think it was January 18th or 19th. Basically, it allowed municipalities and school districts to recover costs associated with that storm. The January blizzard is what they're referring to under FEMA. A bunch of us attended, I attended for the district, a bunch of us from around the area attended a meeting with FEMA, and their first directive to us was the costs that you could recover had to be costs that you expended those 2 days. And we all went, are you kidding me? Who's spending money during the storm, right? From a practical standpoint, to which, whether they listened or they went back to the FEMA folks, but they have extended the reimbursement period for that's on. So the bottom line is, I received an email today that our application to recover approximately $27,000 made it through its first reading and second reading with FEMA, and I have a telephone interview with FEMA rep tomorrow, and I'm hoping at that point, the next board meeting, I'll be able to notify the board that the district was able to recover, and that is 100% of our cost, by the way, of our cost to shovel snow, for lack of a more technical term, take the snow off the roof for 3 schools, and then to have the front end loader remove that snow away from the building. So sometimes the system works, and I'm hoping the system's gonna work this time too, a lot better.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You'll forward that to the budget committee for tomorrow, his report. Thank you. All right. Next here is principals reports, and I'd like to do do it to the time, and we're gonna be going into the handbooks, that if there's anything outside the reports, and I appreciate the reports, and they will be in the minutes, if there's anything outside the reports that all 3 of you have to offer. If not, we'll just move into the handbooks. Select Letter, do you have anything else outside the report?
I do not, Mr. Burke. So my presentation on the handbook is going to be pretty brief. Do you all have the document with the highlights?
Yep.
I'll just get into this. So first of all, just to give you a general outline, if you've had the pleasure of reading our handbook in the past, you've noticed that the policies are embedded throughout the document. It makes it very hard to read, and you just get going, you get a little momentum, get very interested in the information, and then there's a long policy in there. And so we have put all the policies in the back now of the handbook. There's an appendix. I don't know that you necessarily can see all that on the document, but when you see references to the appendix, that's what that is, and all the policies will be listed in the back. The only real change in anything here, and it's not significant, is on page 11. And I just want to make sure I make note of it, is under makeup work. In the past, we've specifically given an amount of time that students have for makeup, and we spent a lot of time this year. I've talked about the book study we've been doing about assessment. That sort of sets the framework for some of this change. But instead of just putting a guideline of no matter what, you get 2 weeks to get the work back in, we're trying to be more flexible with students in situations. You know, there are kids that might be out for health reasons for 2 weeks, and they may need more time to get the work back in. So really making those arrangements on a case-by-case basis with the teacher, and that's worked really well in the past. And because there's so many situations that come up, that's a tweak on makeup work. The other things that change every year are again, changes this year. Edline on page 13 are dates. We do 2 biweekly updates on Mondays, so that's just an update. And then on page 18, under standardized testing, just an update for the new testing that we do and the time frame on that. And there's still discussion at the PERC level around what that's going to look like moving
You're
forward.
off on all of them by 1 page, Tom.
Yeah.
Oh, am I off? I'm sorry.
We're like up 1.
Okay.
The Edline, we definitely won't be in Edline next year, because we know that regardless of which of the 2 systems we're in, so I think we'll just have to put some sort of disclaimer.
We could put, online grading updates or something more general instead of specific.
You know,
Yeah.
for information on availability of grades, please check the school website.
Yep.
Because it's going to be relatively fluid.
Yep. That makes sense. So just the standardized testing program, I don't think that any of this is probably news to, I know you're here at the table, you hear us talking about assessments and the district assessments that we're giving, so it's just an update on those. And those are the updates. It's been a really good year in terms of climate and culture with the students. You know, a lot of the stuff that you see in a handbook usually comes back to things related to climate and culture and procedures and things like that, and it's just been a really positive year. We run data every quarter through our PBIS team, and things have trended in a real positive direction the past 3 years. So I try to take any feedback I get over the course of the year from the school community, and it's just not a whole lot of tweaking this year. So, any questions?
Straightforward.
Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson? So, again, outside of your handbook, was there anything else outside of your report?
No, I tried to cover all the things that were coming up, and I think it's pretty much there. But thank you for that. We also don't have a lot of changes. One change that we are thinking of making, and I just wanted to throw it out, as you know, we send our handbook each year to the agenda company, and even though we send it as a Word document, it gets reformatted. So the page numbers always end up wrong, because they shrink it, so it fits into a booklet format. It's like a half page, and invariably, the page numbers come out wrong. So we thought, well, the only way there were two ways we control it. We could ask them to send it to us back, and we can proof it for page numbers. But the other thing we thought of is we could remove the page numbers and simply have a listing of the contents without inaccurate page numbers. So I don't know if there's a suggestion, but it's funny to have wrong page numbers. It does give parents at least a ballpark of where to find it, so it's.
How many do you need,
How many what?
books?
Well, they built, it's
Is it
Part of the
500,
agenda.
500 books?
I have to think about that question. So I think we don't use
For
it.
first
these
grade.
books, you give one to every student?
second
That's
grade
what I'm
up.
thinking about, yeah,
Second grade up.
right.
So-
So it's about 330. But it isn't just.
So you can probably have these printed as an 11 by 17 saddle stitch booklet.
Well,
for
that
Under
if-
$900.
So if we did it as a separate document, then we would need one for every student, I would think. Right now, I mean, maybe
Well,
that's.
I would tell you to use a number of $3 a piece.
Yeah,
Find out how much you're paying to the company to do them, all that work, to the agenda company, to put it as part of their agenda.
yeah,
If you did 500 books and it's $1,500 or less, then they're a bargain. If it's $1,500 or more, you're paying much more than you need to for that process.
I don't know the long history of why it's in the agenda book, but I think it's so it's all in one place. So both students and parents, because they look at the agenda book every night, see what the assignments are and that kind of thing.
I'm a parent of 2 students who went through yours.
Yeah,
I never found one time where I actually needed to look at a policy procedure for my elementary school students.
It's because you know them all, John.
You're special, dude.
Well, I don't, but for middle school, I've had to pull a figure out for one of my children who'll name anonymous, but,
Let's talk about high school.
I wouldn't disagree.
and
that
again,
that
it's
is-
about a dress code
Yeah,
issue.
that's probably I would say that's a fairly common experience. I don't have a lot of parents call me and say, I'm looking at page 27.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm just saying that, if you can save some money in that process. I mean, you could even take that same book and shrink it down to a 8.5 by 11, so it's 5.5, 8.5 at finished
Yeah.
size. And, it probably finds 499 recycle bins within a week of school. If it was independent, that's where it would go. So at the end of the year, maybe it has a life because they keep the agenda, but I don't know if, I'm just saying it's an opportunity to save on the agenda, making your agendas a little bit thinner, maybe cost a little bit less, allows you to do a little bit more flexibility things. And all of these policies and procedures are online.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree for the high school, and I agree for middle school, you may need to give them an actual copy of it, but I'm really hoping that's not an issue in the elementary school.
Could you perhaps send out a waiver to parents saying our policy book is online? If you would like a hard copy, sign and return this form with your child in your beginning of the year packet. And that way you're only handing them out to parents upon request, and it may save on some of that cost.
I'd be happy to. In fact, the district I came from, we did not send it home to every elementary student. We did exactly that, and we printed about 50, and we still had them left over.
Still had 49 when the year was over.
So that would be a very simple procedure if that's okay with the board.
We just think when we become fully automated, it'll be on their Google Pad.
Yeah.
There is one issue, and that is the student handbook is we're required to provide parents with information about what our policies are in order to be able to say that we have informed them. And this is the sticking point with this. Unless we have some way of verifying that they've waived and said, I've read all of these policies, this becomes our our method of notifying parents that these are the policies, and if students violate the policy, here's what happens. And so that's the rub. That's why the
Well, couldn't
policies are here.
you easily, as he was saying, couldn't you give them a form that has to be signed one way or the other and come back the first week? I mean, they come home with a ton of other forms they have to
Right,
get
like
signed.
the student information sheets, just attach a waiver with it. I've read the policies online, or check, I've read the policies online and I'm okay with that, or check, please send home a hard copy, for my records.
Why don't I call Gordon and get his input on it
Yeah, go through standards.
ASAP?
That was a great idea until we had to call Gordon.
Well, how many, we must have email addresses for 80% of the students, I bet. His email a copy of it, too.
I think we have more than that,
More than
because
that,
when I
yeah.
do a Blackboard message, it goes to
That's-
400, and, I mean, it's a lot of email
There you go,
addresses.
just print the ones you don't have.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and it's the same thing with the other schools. I mean, at some point in time, as we're moving towards more of a digital process in our schools, these are going to become, I mean, I can't imagine how many times somebody, as I deal with vendors, I mean, I had a vendor in yesterday, and we were working on something, and the contract's right there, and I signed right on his laptop, and we were good to go. So, I mean, we're headed in that direction. But for you, it's an opportunity to see if you can save money and make your things a little thinner. And again, I don't.
I think, let me have a quick call to Gordon. If we could actually because the policies are all the same. So rather than worry about a checkoff, we do have everybody's information. If we can email it out as an alert now with a memo, either from the district office and say, here's your copy of your policies, here's a link if you lose your policies, please be advised that your child will be held by. I mean, that's at least as significant a notice as that book going home. Because I'm sure, what percentage of parents realize there's policies in the book, quite honestly. So let me see if Gordon, if we can get away with that.
I mean, it's a lot of, I mean, I'm in the paper killing business, but that's a lot of paper.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll wait to hear from that, but, so, page numbers may be fixable. That would be good, that's how we started this. And the next change is on page 6. And on page 6, it's, all of these are fairly minor. We changed, our superintendent may initiate the use of blizzard bags to the school district, just to make sure it's clear that, it's a unified thing from the district. On page 9, we have changed again minor, at the very bottom of the page, we now provide kindergarten and preschool students with the opportunity to buy milk through the lunch program, so we added pre-K. On page 12, there are some changes in the library language. So you mentioned all the paperwork we send out at the beginning of the year. One of the things we've historically sent out is a fairly lengthy borrowing contract for the library. When we talked about it, and we talked to Mrs. Pavel-Tamel, the language in the handbook is the same in the contract, and a contract with a 7-year-old is not legally binding anyhow. So we decided that we would forego the contract, and it's really understood that kids have to return a book if they borrow it. So we took that out. We don't plan to send the contract home. And we had twice that overdue notices are sent home regularly. So at line 6, we have it printed once there, the language that had been at the bottom, but we're not going to repeat it. Everyone gets how a library works. On page 13, we made a few changes in the language about standardized assessment because as things change as to how we're administering those, we try to keep up. So we had the NWEA assessment. It's called the NWEA MAP test. We changed the name. The number of times is changed. We plan to do it typically once a year to students in grades 2 through 4. We have to do grade 1 in the fall, we feel, and that's what we did this year, because that's really a baseline. We want to know how they do to begin with. So grade 1 is not included in that. We took out the line, other formal specialized testing only occurs through referral and parental permission. That generally is true, certainly if it's part of the special ed process. It didn't feel like it needed to be stated here, but we do district-wide and statewide testing, so we thought it's unnecessary to state it at this point. We did, well, I'm wrong. We just moved that line to the end. Sorry, I forgot that. Yeah, we went back and forth. So we put that line at the end, because for special ed process, any testing that's done does require written express parent permission. On page 15 is the last change, and that is the wrong page number. Sorry, I was using, I'm not sure what I was.
See, those page numbers were changed
Yeah.
just between here and there.
Oh, I see what it is. Oh, we fixed it. In the copy I had submitted to our administrative assistant, we had a formatting problem on page 15, but it's been fixed. So there's nothing on page 15. That's it for changes.
Anyone have any questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So now we'll move to high school. Ms. Arthos, excuse me.
Evening.
I don't know if you had anything outside of your report that you
Yeah,
want
I
to
just
touch
have
on?
a couple things. I just wanted to thank the school board members who were able to attend our 3.92 banquet last Thursday night. It was lovely. We had 10 students, and it really is one of the highlights of the year, and last week was, one of the best ever, and it was just a lot of fun, so thank you. We did receive that we are international high school F1 status, so on the June 10th meeting, I'll give everyone, Jody and I'll come and give everyone an update on what that means, and if we're going to be ready to start accepting students in the fall. And then finally, Sean McDonough was honored by the governor as the 2015 Running Start Teacher of the Year. And so that was a highlight for him. And that's, the Running Start program is the college-ready community college credits. And so we're offering students in his classes college credit, and because of his enthusiasm and all the work that he's done, he was selected as that teacher, so I think that's important.
Before you go into the handbook, I just started looking at the can't remember what it's called, the report you sent out as far as the numbers and how they escalate as far as like from the harder subjects going up and just, I mean, it was very impressive as far as seeing the courses that the kids are taking right now in comparison just like 5 years ago and just how it's escalated.
The data sheet, yeah. Yeah, and I think at one of the school board meetings, Jeanine asked me if I could just, every now and then, update that data and just send it out so you can see, you know, the improvements that the high school is making. So, and I'll just keep doing that. We're really excited about our AP test, and hopefully we'll have good results. So the handbook, out of all the years that we have worked on the handbook, this was probably the least changes that we've had. And on the beginning, there's just, you know, the date, so that's not really big changes. The names on page 4, the calendar. GPA, as we talked about, we're going to continue to have rigor. So for National Honor Society, the weighted GPA has gone up for them to be even considered to go through the National Honor Society process. We still, with that 3.75 GPA, will have a large number of our student body applying for National Honor Society. It's great. Then just change to the main office contact number. And then.
So, question on that.
Yes,
So,
sure.
parents or guardians must notify. I think you shall notify,
Shall? Okay.
should notify. I
Shall's
don't know if you
fine.
can demand, must is a demand word,
Okay,
you know,
shall notify.
so.
You can demand, they just might not listen.
You could, but, you know, you may find it easier to use this little softer word there.
Okay, no
Well,
problem.
they'll notify you if you don't, so.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, you know, they did.
They will notify you.
They will notify you, yes.
And then on page 52, the reason for this change is we have seniors, and the NHIA, remember, you have to have 4 classes to graduate. For Campbell High School, you have to be passing 6 classes to graduate. But the language for seniors, because remember, some of them have early release where they had to be on track to graduate. What we took that to mean is that if even if they were passing 5 classes, but they are failing senior English, they're not on track to graduate. So we were making them not eligible for spring sports, which we thought was the intent of the school board. But we just wanted to clean it up a little bit because the NHIA just says 4 classes. So literally a kid in another school could be failing senior English. If they're passing the 4 classes, they still could be playing sports. And so we wanted just our students to know if you're not on track and you're not passing all the classes you need, then you're not going to be eligible. And then finally, when you look at the NHI handbook, because of Edline, some of our parents and students think that once they're passing, they're eligible again. And so we just wanted to make sure they know that it's by quarters. So if you fail 3rd quarter, and in 3 weeks you're passing everything, you still can't go back and play sports. You're done for the whole quarter. And then,
I don't know if that's, is that a, an
NHIA,
administration policy or NHIA policy?
and it's the NHIA.
So they say that if somebody, let's say someone's an underclassman, so they're juniors, sophomore, if they fail their
Second
4th quarter,
4th quarter.
they can't play fall sports.
No, the new rule in the NHIA, probably 3 years old, is if they do a credit recovery in the summer. So the NHIA used to say, yes, you're done. But now they've changed their policy to say you can do a credit recovery in the summer and still be eligible, which is good for kids.
So a student here could not pass a class in any quarter, fall, winter, or fall, winter, whatever the first 3 quarters are, because they didn't pass a competency, meaning they passed 11 of 12 competencies, so they did not pass that class. They go back in the next quarter, they pass the 12th competency, they now have completed that class, and they now should be receiving a passing grade because they've now shown proficiency in that class. Yet, they cannot play in that sport that's falling there. So if it's fall, they can't play in winter sports, and if it's winter, they can't play in spring sports. Yet, if they failed in their spring, they can go to summer school and play in the fall.
Correct, that's the NHI ruling.
That's not fair.
No, I know, that's the NHI ruling. So the NHIA has only 4 classes. We have 6 here, but, and we had a long discussion, if you remember, because we had some concerns about just that, you know, but it's by quarter. So if they fail third quarter, the day that those third quarter grades go out, John Patterson has to do, you know, we have to send things out to every single coach, all because our policy is co-curricular.
Yep.
And that's why if you notice, our school play, they stay away from the dates, the weekends of grades closing, because they could lose their lead, you know, and that happened one year. And so now they're looking at when our grades are closing, so, you know, they.
That's why you have an understudy.
Find out.
Yeah.
So they don't, you know, find out and have, you know, it's heartbreaking. But, you know, right now, we completed senior projects. We met with all the kids that are, you know, not completed with senior projects today. And we have been having our seniors who have a little senioritis attend Saturday school right now. And we are, you know, bringing them in and saying, you're not going to graduate unless you get this work done. And we've been very happy that they've been showing up, you know, because we want them to graduate.
Close. It's so far away.
And it's right around the corner, and that's what
It
we've been
is.
telling them. And, you know, that senioritis really, it gets them, you know, so. But we have almost all of our senior projects complete. I bet you will have them complete in the next week or so. That's a good thing. And we're hoping to have, you know, high numbers at graduation, but we don't know yet. And we will change in our policy, Mike already circled it, the ed line, and say, you know, again, that this system may be changing, check our website.
Is that it? Anybody have any questions?
The whole document?
Yeah.
Page 44. I was just going through and looking at a couple things. One's just an interest thing. It says in here that we're identifying paging devices and beepers as contraband. I'm just wondering the extent to which students are showing up at Campbell High School with pagers, or if you can still actually get one. So, I know we took cell phones off the list last year, but the reason that I was on that page was to look at the definition of insubordination and profanity, and I asked Michelle to look this back up from last year's notes. And in last year's notes, it looks like we're going to get rid of a couple of the pieces. Remember, we had occasion to look at this about a year and a half ago, and the insubordination is defined as the use of rude or inappropriate language directed to school personnel or any other adult, and actually it's not insubordination. Insubordination is the second part, refusal to allow a staff member or administrator's request, such as, it's also not being rude or demonstrating disrespectful behavior. That's not insubordination.
Yeah, I think it's profanity and then insubordination, but you're right, so we just.
So I had it marked as
Insubordination out.
an incorrect reference, new wording, or take it out
Yeah, we'll just
from
take
last year, and it appears
insubordination.
just to be an overlook. So-
Insubordination defined as, just take that out.
So it would just, my suggestion would be,
We'll just-
consider insubordination is defined as refusal to follow a staff member's or administrator's request, such as refusing to identify. Those are all really good examples of being insubordinate. Teachers and administrators have a reasonable right to expect that when they're directing a student to do something, they should do it. And when they don't, it's insubordination. And that it's that straightforward.
Should you follow it up with like kind of how you did below with lying? Is encompasses but not limited to, and then do the profanity encompasses but not limited to, the use of rude or inappropriate language, maybe move that stuff down?
That's all referenced in other places.
Okay.
I mean, even level 3 over here is failure to follow a reasonable request is here as an example of a level 3 behavior. And it indicates it's behavior that causes significant disruption.
Did you find the dress policy? So, how's the year been on the dress policy?
It's been rocky with some kids. I will meet with students who are out of dress code, usually with either Jody Callanan or Rachel Baker, just so I'm not the only one conversing with them. I'll get emails from some faculty members 2-3 times a week with some violators that we'll address. I believe there was a issue that was talked about at the beginning of the night. I don't know if you want to talk about that now, or
Well,
how you want to go about that.
there were a few points that, I mean, Ms. Baker, I believe is her name, outlined. And I'm uncertain if we can just get clarification, like, how the procedure works, or if, I mean, do you see them coming in first thing in the morning, then pull them aside? Is that when you look for violations, or is it a teacher that will notify you of?
I'm not really searching out anybody in
Okay.
particular, like, I mean,
I'm not saying you're looking for particular individuals,
Right, but I don't stand out in front. I do stand out in front in the morning, and, you know, with Kelly Frazier, and I'll usually say hello, good morning. If I notice it, you know, I'm not gonna call them right out there. Usually I'll get Rachel Baker, the nurse, or I'll get Jody Callanan, and I will, you know, I'm called down to the office. I definitely don't wanna be calling people out right in the middle of a group of people, you know, like, you need to go to the office because of dress code. And then we try to promote that, you know, if a teacher notices that a student's out of dress code, you know, shoot me an email, shoot Rachel an email, shoot the main office an email, just say, hey, listen, can you have Mike look at this person, you know, check this person out, you know, maybe talk to them, I think they're out of dress code.
No, like in the course of a week, how many students do you have to like speak to or
Well,
have them change their clothes?
Since the weather has been warmer,
It's changed.
It's increased a little bit.
Yeah.
Last week,
We relaxed it because of,
Oh, yeah, that's
you know,
right.
so we let them wear bandanas, and we have kind of a relaxed dress code just because it's Spirit Week, but if it's anything outrageous, they still have to
I'll give you
change.
today. Today, so because it was so hot, we probably spoke to 6 or 7. They were wearing like thin spaghetti strap. You know, throw a sweater on. A couple kids had to call mom to get a sweater brought to them.
T-shirt.
But most of them had a sweater. I actually, one student came in with really short skirt, and she knew she was going to get caught because she had a pair of jeans in her bag. So as soon as she came in the main office.
So my question is, you know, is it just the girls getting violations for dress codes?
No, definitely not. I probably on a weekly basis will tell a couple of the young men that walk down the hallway to pull their pants up, because some of them still like the style of wearing their pants low and short shirts.
Yeah, but
So hats, sometimes with the boys. Hats are the big one with the boys. You know, they want to either carry them because they don't want to put them in their locker, they don't want to put them in their bag because they don't want the rim to be bent. So they'll hook them onto their belt or they'll carry them. You know, so the hats are a lot with the boys.
so for the boys, it's not really their clothes
Well,
like it is for the girls.
It can be. Boys can have
I mean,
pants.
some of the boys are wearing tank tops, but most of them are thick strap tank tops. And that's what we expect with the female students as well.
Meaning 2 inches in the strap, is that?
Yeah, like 2-3 inches, yeah, yeah. Not the spaghetti strap, that would, you would need to put a sweater on for that.
Or a T-shirt.
Or a t-shirt or something, yeah, right. I think it's the swing of, I know, you take 5-6 years ago, it was the boys wearing the super tight jeans low with short shirts, and you saw undergarments all the time with the male students. Now it's the hats.
I think if you took a video, though, like you just took a random video and you just watched it, you would see that almost all of our kids are dressed appropriately. It's just a few kids. And like Mike said, in the warmer weather, that's a challenge again. But I think most kids are abiding by the dress code, and they're dressing really nice. I think our kids dress appropriately and they dress nice.
What's the most frequent offense? Is it spaghetti straps? Is it bare midriff? Is it skirt?
Well, lately it's been the skirts have been, some have been short. And then I think it's, during the winter, it was the leggings with not a long enough shirt.
Mm-hmm.
The tight leggings without a long enough shirt. So. And that's why I always make sure that I have Ms. Callanan or Nurse Baker with me whenever I talk to a student. Male or female, really.
And I'm certain I can imagine, it's like in any school. I mean, you can pick any school anywhere. I mean, you're gonna have violators, and you're gonna have people who abide by the dress code. And I'm certain, like you said, once the warm weather started, all of a sudden, they pull out the shorts from last year, and they don't quite fit the same way, but hey, I'm still gonna wear them kind of thing. That's what I'm thinking. It's like, oop, nope, can't wear those.
Right.
I'd love to hear your opinions. Do we unfairly target women with the dress code?
I think women have such a variation of clothing they can wear. I mean, that's,
The guys probably wear jeans and a t-shirt every day, but
or shorts.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, honestly, it's hard to say, because I think the styles for boys and the objectionable clothing that boys are wearing is so different from what is against dress code for girls. It's really difficult to say, and, I really don't
Right,
know
it is.
if it's
I
a
think
huge
it's like
problem, if it's kind of equal, if there is at least, the same amount of kids. It's not just girls getting targeted, but there's girls and boys
Yeah,
that
and
are
I mean, I
being-
don't see, we don't have the boys wearing the spaghetti strap shirts or,
The short shorts.
the short shorts and the short skirts, So that's the tough part.
It's hard, and I honestly, every argument has two sides, and,
Right.
I see the side of, you're revealing too much, you're showing too much, and I see the side of a lot of parents that say, you're teaching my daughter that it's okay that a boy is going to objectify her based on her looks, so it's her fault. We need to educate, the boys not to view. And I can see that to an extent, and it's hard because it's how a garment is worn. There's many beautiful dresses that come with spaghetti straps, and it's not purchased or worn intended, to create any type of reaction. But it unfortunately, there does have to be a policy, and it affects both sides. So it's tough. I wouldn't
And there
want
are,
to be.
I agree that there's probably a lot of tasteful.
Yeah, there
All of
are.
that.
There's always an exception,
Right.
and that's where it's really hard for some people to. I can see why people get upset on either sides of the fence. I really can.
Right.
But the thing that also has to be hard, too, is that you might have somebody who's wearing a top or something that is relatively tasteful, but still technically is against the
Right.
code. If you let them
Right.
wear that, then somebody's going to look at that and say, hey, how come they got away with that? So there must be a
Right.
difficult
And there was a young lady today
thing to deal
that
with.
she was wearing a very tasteful outfit, but we had to just follow, to be consistent, because I didn't want that person to come back and say, well, or another person say, well, she was wearing, you let her wear it, why, but you didn't let me
Right.
wear mine. What's the
Right.
difference?
At the same time, I can't imagine you catch every single infraction every day.
No, I definitely.
Right, so if the
do
person
not.
said,
And
well,
that's-
they,
And I
Sally
think
wore it
that's where
yesterday.
some of the animosity comes from. because I'm only one person. I'm in IEP meetings, I'm in, chat meetings, I'm in and out, there's only one of me, so.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that I have someone with me to address it, so if Jody's not available or Rachel's not available, I may have to wait 45 minutes before I put someone in, because I want to make sure that I have that second set of eyes. It's just, I'm gonna cover all the bases when it comes to especially with the dress code, male or female.
Any other questions about dress code?
I think we've killed it.
Yeah, we can keep this one forever.
The dreaded dress
Yeah.
code.
And the thing is, we have a dress code. That's, I think, what the bottom line is. It's there, and hopefully we can police it well enough. And I'm sure by next year, there'll be another different style that's out. You're talking about spaghetti straps. It's like those camis. I mean, that's the fashion. I know my daughter has like 60 of them. It's like,
Yeah.
that's what they wear.
I'm gonna wear one next week, so you guys kick me out.
I don't know if the
We won't kick
schools,
you out next week, but in 2 weeks, we may kick you out.
I don't know if the schools do this, but maybe there might be a refresher when the weather starts getting warm,
Send a notice out.
Notice
Mr. Cooper
or
can tell us about a refresher.
it'd probably be done with a little bit of humor, but at the same time, so, heads up, there are certain things
That's what we
that,
did one
that are
year.
gonna
We
get
had
you.
our teachers become dress code violators, and
Bad
students
boys.
are still, they talked about it for 4 years, and it was supposed to be fun, and it was fun, and we just.
very short skirt.
He did. He did, and we tried to make it,
That's an image I did not need.
Enough said.
The khakis stayed on.
Does anybody have anything else for Mr. Perez or Mrs. Rothaus? No, let 'em go.
Actually, can I just say one other thing, too? I just want to add to Laurie's comments, and I should have said this during the school board comments, but the academic excellence banquet really was a wonderful thing. It's lovely because kids select teachers who are particularly meaningful for them. And then those teachers really make a beautiful speech about the students, and it's such a lovely evening. I found myself tearing up with every student and every teacher that spoke. It's really the essence of what we're all about and what the schools are all about. So it's a really wonderful thing. I wish more people could go and see it and really see what it is, what it's all about and what is said. It's wonderful. So just want to add that.
Thank you.
One quick note from Michelle that she caught. The proposed changes to academic eligibility and performance are part of policy JJ, so we should probably put policy JJ on the meeting for 2 weeks from tonight. And if Mr. Perez or Ms. Rossos, you guys could take a look at that and give us a draft of what it would be changed to. And with that,
Oh, you mean because of the parentheses that I put at the back?
the policy is, we just need to make sure that if that's where we are, then we have to align with the policy. So in this
Yeah,
case,
I mean, okay,
change the policy.
that's fine. I mean, so you're in reference to the parentheses? Okay.
So if you can just draft us a revised policy and send it to Michelle.
Okay.
We'll get it in the board packet really early.
Yeah, if NHIAA has changed something, we want to make sure the policy aligns with that.
Yeah, I don't-
So,
I don't-
No, yeah.
I didn't change any of the wording. All I did was I added at the
You
end.
added, so we want to add that to the policy,
Just to, yeah,
to make it, and have the board
to
approve
talk
that.
to us
so
about
it's- yeah.
credit recovery. Okay, that's fine.
You guys all set? Thank you. Next, we have the enrollment report.
Similar trend, we tend to go up during the school year and then drop a little bit. As you'll note, the trend has been up by a total of 14. 3 of those have been additional identified students. very pleased to see the overall total go up at GMS by 14 students. It's a pretty booming real estate market out there right now, so this might be a year of some significant change. I just did a quick look back to a year ago in the May enrollment report. And a year ago, we're at 67 in the end of January last year. We were 68 this year. February was 68 last year. We were, sorry, the other way around. 68, and we're down 1 to 67 this year. End of February was 69 last year. We're 68 this year. February and March were the other way around. Last year was 73, and this year we're 74. And last year was 74, and we're at 75. So we're essentially within a student, and we brought in 78 grade ones last year. Policy would be maximum of 80 for 4 classes with 3 more. So at this point in time, we have, some wiggle room. And the other thing is, we tend to lose some over the summer. So I know it's a point that Mr. Barker has brought up on a couple of occasions, including at the deliberative, just something we want to keep our eye on. If we see a significant jump, we may want to have a conversation with Mr. Markowitz about finding some.
Those conversations.
A lot.
Do you really think I have a magic pot somewhere that I just go to the end of that rainbow?
Only encumber some number for next year, just in case.
No, at this point in the year, it's not finding a new pot, it's taking from somebody else's pot.
The pot is leaking right now.
Cochran, do you have a similar comparison to the kindergarten numbers? You did it, like first grade?
I don't, but I can
just
find
curious.
that tomorrow. Actually,
Wait, nice.
Michelle, if you could get that tomorrow. and-
Yeah, I think we had that, you had given that to them a few months ago, remember?
Yeah, we can update it and
We
get it
can
back to you.
update it.
We'll
You
just
compare
email it out
last
to
year,
you.
this year, for those 4 dates.
Yep.
Because looking right now, we have 43, there's a 424, and this year we have 75 students.
Mhm.
I know the summertime, certain people coming in, it's not registering, but it's just a pretty big variance. I'm just
Yeah,
curious where it was
it's
last
big.
year.
Big,
All right. I guess the committee reports. We already heard from Perk, so I meet tomorrow with budget.
The teacher evaluation revision updates. 2 groups are concluding their work. The Classroom Teacher Evaluation Committee, which Mr. Cooper thankfully sits on, has put a lot of work in. The next little while, we have 2 more meetings scheduled. And of the 4 areas of Danielson, I think we've pretty much determined the level of proficient for all 4 areas. We have to look at adding some parts of the rubric that relate to special services in each of those areas. Planning as it relates to special services, IEPs and 504s, probably a single rubric for each of the 4. And we've done some work on that already, so that we'll be creating. Director Bandersky and I have the second meeting with the special education group, working on a brand-new rubric for their evaluation, because up until now, they've been evaluated on the classroom teacher rubric, which has, given that if you're a case manager, most of your job is not reflected by the evaluation that we're using, so we're looking forward to that. We have a lot of input from a lot of teachers on this. We still have to come back with a larger group to look at what we call the 4 levels. Some of the stuff we're going to be able to take more time on. The major things that we need to be compliant on is the rubrics that will be used for the teacher observations, and then the final form. So we needed those forms ready for September, and it looks like we're going to be on track, thanks to some good work and on behalf of administrators and especially teachers, who it's really wonderful to see administrators and Dr. Heon and teachers sitting there talking about, so what's the purpose of the observation process, and what are we looking for, and how do we know, that what people are looking for and why we're doing it, and just some really good collegial dialogue. The only area that we're a little behind on is that we have to do a bit of a redo on the nurse, but the nurse isn't one of the categories that needs to be reported to the state, so if we needed to, we could push that off to the fall. Then we have to look at the larger document that all of those are contained in and do some revisions to that as well. But again, that can be, doesn't have to be done for July 1 or September 30th.
So is this something we're planning on using in our 15-16 school year?
Absolutely.
So that we don't get it on one day and have to approve it? What's the time frame for the school board?
We can get them to you, some of them we can get to you now. I want to put it, I'd like to have it together in one document, so you have the context. We'd have the entire summer to have them approved. We just need to make sure they're done.
So we would be able to see the first, or a completed 90% draft at our first meeting in July? So that we
Some
can
of
then.
them, some of them are completed now.
Well, you said you wanted to make it a full document, so if that's the case, then,
Oh, yeah, I
you
would
said you had other
expect that
meetings
all of those
going.
except nurse, and possibly even nurse would be finished before the end of the school year.
I just don't want to have it at our meeting in August. That's the week before or the week of the
Nope.
fact that teachers are back at school and
No, I think there
we're
should
now
be
approving this.
some real substantive discussion and taking a look through. I would expect that.
Make sure it's a
that-
slow
that-
agenda day, too.
Well, I mean, the summer is fairly slow in itself, but, so we have it in July, we can, you know, and I don't want to sit here and have to, I don't know how long this document's going to be, but, you know,
Altogether, about 80 pages.
yeah.
Like I said, it'll be a
Yeah,
low.
let's
it'll be a
not
slow
try to
agenda.
rush through it in one meeting, because after like 20 pages, you know, I'm like, I don't know if my brain can function 80 pages that quickly.
Frank, I think he's talking about your report right now.
I'm sorry?
Mr. Numbers over here.
He's talking about your report, 80 pages.
I think it's a great report. for
My
the budget
report was
committee.
2 pages. It was the executive summary, it was all
Yes.
that other stuff that jumbles it all up there.
That's a good report.
So yes, John,
for
we'll
the
work
budget
on getting it.
I just don't think I don't think you want to give us 80 pages, have a discussion in a meeting, and then looking for, I mean, you know, if this is how we're going to go moving forward to have a process in place to
We could,
review teachers, and the other key is that you have, it's going to be a moving document, the fact that you're bringing in one-to-one teaching, and you're bringing in some other things that we really don't know how that's all going to impact that process. So it's probably something that you're going to get started into the year 15, 16, but it probably could very easily need to be adapted and changed as you're going through, but it needs to be something that the teachers are comfortable with,
I would almost
administration
think, I would almost think that if, I know you want to do it as one package, but if you have some of the segments that are completed now, just send them off to us so we can
Well,
start,
so for
start
example,
looking.
reading specialists and the group that includes physical therapists can be done, drafted, brought in, take a look at, feedback, and have those
Well,
approved as sets.
then we can start, I mean, we can start that in June, that.
Sure, well, we can
you know,
start that next, yeah, we can start
I
that
mean,
next
This way
meeting.
you're not doing 80 pages at once,
Yeah,
you're just doing a
I think
segment.
it's, I think
and
it's
then put it
important that
all
we
together.
look at classroom teacher and special education teacher at the same time. Because part of it is, you know, defining to some extent that collaborative working relationship between the two. But yeah, we could do like 2 at a time at each meeting in June and break it up.
That's fine, I mean, it's just,
And then we can get it all
So,
together.
You and I
afterwards.
can sit down and develop a schedule.
Okay.
What's that? Public input? Michelle, you'll send the, enrollment. I'll bring Phil's hard copy.
Nathan Cooper, LEA President. Just on the teacher evaluation thing, I've talked about it before, and I think we're doing some good work on there. And beyond just the committee work, I'd like to also see, even if it's not necessarily the LEA, but also have a larger group of teachers, at least all classroom teachers, be able to, look at the document, as you said, to be able to get buy-in. And I'd hate to see that process and the good work derailed or there be an issue because the larger group didn't necessarily have the time. And I want to be sensitive. I think Mr. York brings up a good point in being sensitive to those timeframes, but also, can we manage together to go ahead and make sure that everyone, is able to take a look at it,
Well, given that we've had teachers as the biggest group of people giving
Right.
input in all of this, perhaps
Yes.
we could include Mr. Cooper, Michelle, in a meeting that talks about, here are the meetings we want to bring them forward.
Right.
Here are the timelines that we would,
And-
send them out to people for their feedback.
Yeah,
And might be able to actually collate feedback.
Right, and if I could even, if the LEA facilitates the process, or if there's another way as far as letting our members or teachers review it, is there anything that they see that we didn't see, sort of thing?
Well, I would agree that, as you're releasing the document to us, you should release it to President of LEA, and then you can be responsible for, if you don't give it to your members, then it's not our fault,
That's on me, absolutely.
And so, but I think that's fair, because then you'll also have the schedule.
Yes.
And if and I think we should allow it at the meeting when we're gonna have that, we should allow that to be more of an open discussion. Hopefully, it's not 100 teachers, maybe you
Yes.
can control that process.
Yeah.
But if there are some issues and stuff that,
Sure.
rather than yourself, if other teachers want to articulate that, they can sit at the table, because at the end result, it needs to be a process that everybody supports and
Correct.
is behind, and really, you got to have a buy-in from everybody.
Absolutely.
Whether we'll get 100%, maybe
Sure.
reaching, but we ought to have a very, very high percentage of people.
Right, and that's
behind.
that's really just what I, and we've talked about that before, and, I just wanted to state that publicly, so.
Good.
Thank you so much, appreciate it.
With no other public input, we'll go into non-public. Dismissal, promotion, or compensation of any public employee, or disciplining of such employee, and the investigation of any charges against him, unless the employee affected, one, has a right to a meeting, and two, requests that the meeting be open, in which case the request shall be granted. B, the hiring of any person as a public employee, C, matters which, if discussed in public, would likely affect adversely the reputation of any person other than a member of the body of the agency itself, unless such person requests an open meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper.
Yeah,
Thanks.
make a motion.
Second. Yes.
Yes. Derek, say yes.
He did, he put his
Said
thumb
yes
up.
beforehand, yes. We're now in non-public.